pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And next, a public input statement from our fill-in vice chair.
We have a very nice crowd today. Our next up is public input, which is an opportunity for the public to come up and address the board. We have two public input sessions, one at the beginning of the meeting and one at the end. The public session we're about to have, you have a limit of 3 minutes time to speak. We recognize people from in-district. However, folks from out of district are allowed to speak with permission of the chair. Most topics are okay to speak about. However, we do not talk about things, we can't talk about law, things like employees, discipline issues, things like that. So unless there's any questions, we can open up the public input.
So anybody have anything to say? Oh, yeah. Yeah, come up to the mic.
Good evening. My name is Brenda Gagne. I'm the Adult Education Director here at Noble Adult and Community Education. I just wanted to update you on a couple of exciting things that have been happening this fall. Last night was our 15th annual pajama party with a guest author, Lynn Plourde. She was quite a success. We had 38 children and 25 adults who were enchanted with her interactive program. She had the students actually act out one of her books. It was very exciting. We were very excited that she came to see us and really had a great time. The other thing is we're on track this fall for our registration goals and as well as our literacy goals. We're pretty happy. We've brought on a couple of online programs and people are starting to ask more questions about online training. And so we're happy that that was a good choice. We had been requested from the community to have that happen, and it has, and we're very excited that it's working out. We're bringing on more certificates, certification programs for professionals so that they can work from home as well as on our computer labs when we're not running classes. So if they don't have a lab or internet at home, they can still be successful and get those online courses. Finally, we're currently working on the finishing touches for the winter and spring brochure. Our schedule will be out, the paper brochure will be out the middle of January. And I hope to have a lot more updates for you about our numbers, and we've been graduating people since July 1st, and it looks like we're on track for our estimates for this year, and everyone has jobs so far. Thank you.
Awesome.
Any questions? Oh, thank you.
Brenda, what was the author's name?
Lynn Plourde,
P-L-O-U-R-D-E.
Thank you.
R-D-E.
Thank
I think
you.
it's an E at the end. Just receive some sample.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else like to speak?
All of these teenagers.
Now's the opportunity to affect change, guys. Let's go local government. Anyone have any of it?
Good friend, Mr. Fred.
Yes.
All
We're
right.
the best. I guess there's no extra credit. You guys didn't know about it? It was secret extra credit. But now it is passed. We do have to make an adjustment, I believe, Chair, to the order of what we're doing. And I'd like to make a motion to move number 11, employment, new hires, retirements, and resignations, up the list to take the place of student report, as we don't have our student official here today. So move number 11 to the place of number 5 is the motion.
Okay, somebody to second that?
A second?
Okay, all in favor of moving that? Okay, that is unanimous. Okay, first thing that we have are minutes of the November 1st meeting to approve. Anybody have any changes, corrections? They passed the inspection? Oh,
Wow. So I think we should put that in, that I finally
You're gonna put
reached,
that in the minutes for
I
this
finally
week.
reached perfection for one.
Achievement unlocked.
It's all downhill from here.
It's all downhill from here, but at least I have this moment. I'm gonna.
Yes.
I'm gonna let this moment. Okay.
males and females were accounted for.
Good.
Thank you.
All the letters correct and all the policies and all those
I
things?
don't know.
Thinks it.
Okay, somebody want to make a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as read?
I'll second
With
it.
no changes?
Okay. I mean,
Not
that's
even
in
a
there.
period?
Becky seconded.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes? Guess we got 7-0 tonight.
All right.
One abstention.
Oh, and one abstention, sorry.
Ms. Bond, go ahead.
Okay, let me go back to my minute. I think I have lost myself. There they are. Okay. All right, next. We don't have the student report, so we're going to number 11, employment, new hires, retirement, and resignations.
So we have a resignation from Wendy Ryan at Noble Middle School, the school nurse. She is with heavy heart resigning due to some of her own stuff that she needs to deal with, I guess. It isn't related to school, which is a really big hit for us because Wendy is a really positive attribute to the Noble Middle School. So we have posted the position and we will see what we can do to find something that even closely reaches Wendy's status, but, so we're just putting that forward and asking for your,
Do we have to vote on that?
we do have to vote on that.
If we all vote no, does that prevent this?
It may delay it, but it probably doesn't prevent it. She's probably still gonna do what she needs to do.
I'll make a motion to accept her resignation with regret.
Thank
I
you.
will second that.
Okay, all in favor? 7-0. Okay, what can we do now?
We can do policies.
We can do policies.
We
yeah.
can.
Yeah,
You want to do the second reading ones?
yes.
After me? Okay. So, second reading of those policies. Are those connected? Hold on.
Okay, well,
Second
Shrita and I were at the meeting, we had a conference, telephone conference.
Oh, did you
Yes,
really?
we did. And so we discussed these policies. The first one I'd like to talk about is policy JLG, which is Education of Homeless Children and Youth.
Wait a minute.
I can help with that one if you need it.
And this policy, we feel, we've discussed that we think we should delete this policy because what we do now is, we follow a specific statute, McKinley-Vento, is that correct?
McKinney-Vento, yep.
Homeless Assistant Act, and that's the go-to anyway, so if, that's what we go for information, so that's why we feel that we do not need to have this as a policy in our book.
And we very frequently remove policies that are already covered by law.
Correct, and the homeless liaison, which is Ms. Austin, she wouldn't even look in the policy book for this. She'd go right to the act because that's where the correct information is that she'd have to follow.
And the law states everything that's in the policy, so we would go
Yeah.
to the law. We wouldn't need the policy.
Exactly.
There isn't anything additional at all with it.
I make a motion to remove policy JLG.
I'll second that.
All in favor of that? 7-0.
Can we go ahead and actually rip it from the notebook at this point?
If it feels good, go for it.
Not that it feels good, but if I don't do it
No,
now,
but
I'll
it's, you know
forget.
what, lightening up our policy book is a good idea. We don't need as many policies as we have.
Okay, the
She's
next
calling out.
one that we discussed was JLF, which is a non-required policy, and it's called Reporting Child Abuse and Neglect.
Okay.
That we discussed that, and we thought that we would like to follow, oh shoot, Steve had
I believe Cape Elizabeth had the policy.
yeah.
Yeah, it will be
Yeah.
replaced with Cape Elizabeth as it follows the MSMA suggested policy.
Do we have a copy of that? Is that in here?
He sent that out to us late because we didn't have the meeting until 5 o'clock last night.
Oh.
I know, it was a late one.
Okay.
So I think it is,
Is that the part that's in red here? First part all crossed out, and then right after it, it's one in red. Looks very similar.
Yeah, no, I was on there, it's a child abuse, yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, it was,
Okay. This is a different one, because it's all in red.
Well,
Yeah.
there's,
So the red is, yeah, typically Steve will make any suggested changes in red font. So what you see in black striked out is our current JLF policy.
Yeah.
The language in red following that is the Cape Elizabeth policy that more closely follows MSMA.
yeah,
And they just had Drummond Woodsum go through that policy book, so
right.
you know
so
it's
all
right
good.
on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we would like to,
Oh, here he comes.
Replace that?
oh shoot, we should have adjourned.
We're all on camera now. Okay. Yes, we're gonna replace our current policy with
With
this
this.
version.
Correct. That's what we would
We
like to
got
do.
excited and went to policy. Nice. But you can have your seat back.
Let's just take a minute, let everybody read over the new language. You got back much sooner than I thought.
Really?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Right on time.
We'll let you know later.
A full house, look at this.
Awesome.
So Steve, right now we're talking about policy JLF.
JLF,
Yep.
thank you.
Drummond Woodsum approved it, right?
Yes. And the Maine School Management Association.
What's that book doing here?
Do we have any questions? Look there, then. So where is the actual form? We don't. Talk about form.
That'll come up with JLF.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is our state,
Okay, there's the form, all
that's
right.
the main policy.
Is
Yeah,
this
it's,
the new
uh,
form, or is this?
So we have our DHHS form that we continue to fill out, that's theirs, that we provide them. And then we have this JLF-E is the form that I'll be meeting with, upon your approval, prospective approval. I'll be meeting with guidance counselors, administrators, so forth, to talk about. It's a lot of the same things that we've been doing, but there are some things that are slightly different, and we're going to need to do a little bit of adjusting here, especially when it comes to the new policy JLFA that will be coming up.
So I'd like to make a motion to amend JLF to the new language presented that reflects the MSMA approved policy.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? That was you, 7-0.
Okay, just check this one out.
Okay, and the next one?
You'll be getting a new copy if you want to.
The right color.
Yes,
Yeah,
and I have
get a new
greens to
one.
go out to people tonight, 2 for 1s from the previous meeting.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I'll route those while we're looking. So JLFE, and E is, it just indicates that it's a form of some kind. So JLF, thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. JLFE and JLFR. R's are procedures. Both of these, none of these are required policies, they're non-required, but we take it under strong advice of counsel and the MSMA to have those policies, and these are the recommended tools to support JLF, which we have not had in our policy manual that I'm aware of since starting here a few years ago.
And those are under first reading.
They're under first reading, but we can actually take them here tonight because they're extensions of JLF.
Yes. So we're going to vote on those two.
Yes,
And so these are adding something new
Correct.
yes.
that help with the effective.
They refine, they go further into JLF. So if this is JLF, what's the guide for us to know how to report that? And then what's the procedure that we know that supports the whole process? So rather than making one big 10-page document for JLF, they're broken out into rules and forms.
I move to add policy JLF-E to the policy manual, or policy book.
I'll second.
All in favor? 7-1.
That's the way that we, yes,
Here's the
form.
one.
Yes,
Then we have to do an R.
yes.
Okay, where is the R? Oh, the
Should be
R is
below
in
the
the
E.
other.
Go on a little bit. The R is actually a very short format, and it is almost identical to the process that we use.
It's just a quick, you
just- it's
can
a
look at it really
confirmation.
quick.
Quick, yeah, quick look,
Yeah.
good reminder.
I move to add policy JLF-R to the policy book.
And I'll second that.
Joanne seconded. All in favor?
So the next one, if you could just cancel out that little hyphen in there, it's literally not, it's a separate, it's called JLFA. It's a new policy related to the same topics, but it's also a new requirement by state law that we have that policy. And this is one that is, the sample is provided by Maine School Management as well.
JLF,
JLFA.
Is this under the second readings?
first reading.
This would be under a first reading because it's still the same topic. It is
But
listed
it's
on
a
it's listed on our
yeah.
agenda as being a second reading, first reading,
First
but it
reading.
doesn't need to be because it's actually still an extension of this topic.
I gotta find it, I gotta find it.
This is how much work the state has done on this policy since 2001.
JLFR,
Okay, it might be under your first reading.
that's what I
That's what
meant.
we're going through. I don't remember seeing that.
All right, do you see it?
JLCD,
So I sent it, do you want to table that one?
JLCCC, head lice.
Yeah, so that's first readings, yeah. You want to, so if you look at your second readings for the night, is it in the trail of that?
I don't think so, but I looked at that.
Becky, you saying it's not in the trail of that?
I don't see it on what you sent us.
Okay, so we'll just keep it as a first reading then for tonight, and let people know that there is a required state policy.
Yeah, that's one. I didn't read that today.
Okay. That one's going to, when we get to that, that'll have ramifications to teacher training and towards some other kinds of reporting as well. And it reminds me of the list that Becky and I saw, and Nancy saw at the conference, the Jamie Volmer list.
Yep.
That there's more and more trainings and more, there's SAR, the Child Sexual Abuse Prevention and Response programming that has to go into schools as well. So the minutes aren't going to change, but
Add more.
it's a good thing. There's just, we've got a lot of good things. So we'll just keep that as a first reading.
Which one are you talking about now?
JLFA. It's under first reading anyways.
Yeah.
That form, actually, if you'd gone down, I think, yeah, there was another, on the email that was sent, there was a link that you could click that said, I can't remember what it said right now. It was a little blue thing that you could click. I gotta go back, I can't find it.
Oh, a live link, yeah.
Yeah. On the bottom of that email. Keep going. Are you on the first read?
No,
Is this particularly time sensitive for us to get done tonight?
It is not.
Okay.
It is not. It's
Just-
sensitive to the school year. That's
Well,
it.
let's just leave it on first read, and we'll take care of it next time, next meeting.
Sound like a good plan?
What is KE?
KE
Public
is
concerns.
public concerns and complaints. So,
This is, and that should be under second reading?
so if you look at the brochure that we have, on the back of the brochure, it says public concerns and complaints. Parents, students, or other citizens with complaints or concerns regarding any aspect of MSAD 60 or an employee thereof shall be encouraged to seek a resolution at the lowest possible level. The only exceptions are complaints that concern school board actions or operations. Such complaints should be addressed to the school board, to the board chair, and then it continues. That is an identical copy of policy KE. It's on our handout for public comment.
So, and we're keeping that?
So actually, the recommendation is to delete KE, because there's one thing about this is, it says, at all levels of the complaint process, school employees are required to inform the person making the complaint of his or her right to appeal a decision. Some decisions, however, may not be applied to different levels, like class or team placement. If the complaint cannot be resolved at the lowest level, the person initiating the complaint may appeal the decision to the next level, like supervisors of buildings, grounds and transportation, principal, assistant superintendent, so forth. This guide shall not be utilized by employees for matters of grievances relating to any term or condition of their employment. Such matters shall be addressed through established channels for grievances. The policy is still a little bit loose. It could be read by a number of people to think that, so just about anything that I don't like, I can grieve right up the chain and there's no stopping. So if I want to bring an issue about a bus stop to a school board meeting, or if I want, instead of transportation in the superintendent's office, or if I want to grieve, if I want to complain about an IEP or about a 504, that's something the school board should entertain, and I can bring it to them. So what I'm thinking is, it still goes to, it's still too generic and needs a little bit more tightening up, some more examples in there so that people understand there are some decisions that are final at places. I'm not, as superintendent of schools, I am not going to review a placement of a student in a particular classroom. I know that no administrator put somebody there to say, I'm trying to be harmful to a student. It just doesn't exist. Or I realize that the friendship groups might not be the right mix that somebody thought they wanted with their child. They didn't get something that they wanted, but it doesn't mean that that's going to be a topic for the superintendent or that it's going to be a topic for the board. Because once the board gets into a topic like that, better be prepared to get into every topic. So one is, it's very hard to find another district that actually has a KE. Even though I did notice in the Maine School Board Association handbook that it's listed in section 8 in there as you might want to think about one of these. Apparently, every other district besides Scarborough and MSAD 60 thought about it and said no thanks. So I would recommend that it be pulled and it be in two places as a procedural regulation, like stay in this pamphlet, and the other one is to put it in handbooks where if a parent is going to try to find an answer to something he or she's looking for, where's the most obvious place you're going to look? I don't think you're going to be looking online in the school board policy handbook. I think you're going to look at
Put it right online on the
teacher
website or
handbooks.
whatever.
Put it right in, put it right in the student handbooks. So that's the number one resource. And people are supposed to be signing off with their kids on having reviewed those things.
If I might have a devil's advocate argument for
Look of
this.
consternation over there.
Yeah, this one, I wasn't in for the whole conversation. I feel a little weird about it. Because being part of the board, my entire job, I guess, is in some way, public concerns and complaints. And when we take it out of the policy book, we're taking it out of the purview of the board to have an opinion on it, because once it's in the handbook, it's out of our hands. And I don't know how comfortable, I mean, I'm all about if we want to tighten it up to where it's read right, but to do my job correctly, to address public concerns and complaints, but not have any control on what those public concerns and complaints might be,
That's
kind of feels odd.
it's a little bit different because there are two things. One is public concerns and complaints, and another one is public participation policy, which talks about how people can conduct themselves, what can be talked about, and so forth. But, you know, I'm just making a recommendation. It's up to you folks to decide what's going to be in policy.
If people want to think about it,
And are there any
We
other
can-
opinions from the board?
I kind of hear what, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I think you've got a point.
But on the other hand, as
But-
Steve said, do you want every
No,
little, I mean,
Well,
we,
we've had KE for a while, and I don't know how many everythings we've had come to us.
no, we haven't had any complaints.
well, because I think because people on the school board realize, okay, well, you need, this is not the place, you need to talk to whoever. You know,
And
and go up.
I guess to that, our employee manual is a policy manual. So removing what's appropriate concerns and complaints to a student manual that we might not particularly read as board members, we're not having that guidance. But that's what we're using as our baseline. Now, my particular opinion is if there's things that we can do to rework it, to make it better guidance, I prefer to keep something that's definitely a board job in the board book.
So as I think about it, when I look and see that Scarborough has it, Scarborough has it, and MSAD 60 has it, but other school districts don't,
We also have the best of,
are they advocate?
I'm just saying MSCD 60 leads the way in many things, and this could be one of them.
I was just saying, it's not like those other districts are abdicating that responsibility. So
Yeah.
I'm making a recommendation. It's up to the board to decide what do you feel is for this current board and for future boards, the best things to have in certain places. So.
And the
at
recommendation
will of
is
the board.
to remove, but put in,
I would remove it from the manual, not saying that it removes the power of the control over that from the board, but I would put it in a handbook, and then in a student handbook where people are more likely to access it, and then we already have it on the back of the brochure, but I would go a little bit further in depth on that. Now, if you decide that it's gonna stay in the handbook, in the policy handbook, it doesn't mean that it can't be flagged to be in the student handbooks.
because you
as
still
well.
want to rework it. Like, you're not gonna put it in the handbook as written, because there's things that you want changed.
Yeah, I just wanna add more to the kinds of exemptions.
and as it is now, the board chair always has the option to add anything into the meeting for discussion.
Should be
So if
addressed to the
someone,
board chair.
if someone should
yeah.
contact the board chair, or we contact the board chair and say, hey, I have a concern that a citizen had called me with,
Yep,
can we get this put on the agenda? We'd still be able to do that by talking to the board chair and having that person discuss it with the superintendent and have it added to the agenda.
yeah, no matter where that lies, whether it's a policy level or whether it's a
Right.
handbook level, you still have the option to
Right.
entertain conversation.
So people, no one's going to ever lose the ability to get something on the agenda.
Yeah.
I hear where you're coming from.
My personal opinion, if we're gonna rework it, it can be in the book and the policy. It's not gonna hurt anything to still be in the policy book, other than be a good guideline for us future board members.
Well, what we could do is we could put this back to committee and see if we can rework it to
To be more
Yeah.
specific.
Well, I think
like
Steve's
you
got a
were
lot of
talking
plans in mind on how he wants to rework it in the
Yes.
book.
Yeah. So does that sound all right? Go back to committee?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think we need to go back to committee on that.
Super, let's bring that one back, okay. Okey-doke. So did we cover all of the,
No, we did have some of the first readings to do.
we've covered all the seconds, so we're on to the first?
Yeah.
And we did the JLFA, that's going to come back up. The JLFR is done, the E is done. So there are 3 new policies then, besides the sexual response abuse prevention. There is, the next 3 policies that we'll be looking at are JLCCC, that's the head lice guidelines, and I can't say that without scratching. Honestly, you know, it's the only advantage I've got with this kind of hair. JLCD is a required policy that's on administering medications to students, and JLCE is non-required, it is use of automatic external defibrillators. So those, CE,
Thank you.
so those will be, which is different than JLC-E.
Right.
Okay. So those
Okay.
will be brought to the committee, and
defibrillators?
so this is, yes, use of AEDs. So it's just notification to the public that those are the policies that are under consideration.
Okay. Does that finish them all?
It does.
Everything? Okay.
Okay.
Financial summary update.
Oh, geez, did she give me copies of those?
Want me to make copies? Let's get this one out.
I will attach a copy, and actually, you can make copies of those right now. I got my fob. Do you want to go on to facilities and finance while we
Okay,
take this?
we'll come back to 8.
You're up.
9,
Probably sitting right on my desk, too.
Facilities and Finance Subcommittee update.
So let's see, Lynn and Travis and Joanne. Lynn or Joanne, anything you want to talk to with, about, to the colleagues about what we've been discussing in that meeting, in the subcommittee?
Well, we've been talking about the renovations we need to do at the Northbrook Elementary School, Vivian Hussey School, Noble Middle School, and in addition to the Hanson School in Lebanon. And all of the projects have a lot of, they're all projects that we need to do, and so we just have to figure out the best way to go about funding for each of these plans. The Lebanon addition to the Hanson School would be the largest dollar amount, like 15.5 million, which is a very early number because it's really adding one whole brand-new wing onto the Hanson School. And
That would also have a
Which,
gymnasium.
for
separate
once,
gym.
Lebanon will have a gym that's big enough to actually play basketball in. And then we will be having a tour of the Lebanon Elementary School. I believe it's November 29th,
Do you know what the time is? 'Cause I don't
It's the
remember.
29th, and I do have the
6 to
time.
7:30, I think. or
I believe it's 6 o'clock, and come dressed for the weather, because we'll be outside, too.
And I think that's a really important date for people who want to come to see Lebanon Elementary School. And I love that school. My mom taught there for many years, and I have a lot of attachment to that. But what we have to think about is what's best for our students and the facility that our kids are learning in. And I think once the public goes out and visits the school, they'll understand the need to move to something different. That school has has had a great life. It's well beyond the years that it should have been used as a school because it's a wooden structure. So we've gotten a lot more years out of it than we really should have. But I just hope that residents in all 3 towns want to come out and see the school to know what we're dealing with.
That's the important thing, that people understand. It's not about Lebanon
Oh,
residents
gosh,
come out
no.
and see this.
It's all
Because
3
this
towns.
is everyone's taxes. All
Yeah.
3 towns, all 3 elementary school sites have some kind of construction, as well as the middle school.
Mm-hmm.
The middle school plan was, let's increase the lifespan of this building for another 30 years, and let's up it into the 21st century learning styles. The current Lebanon Elementary School, we've had an in-depth study done on that school. That information will be shared to talk about the condition of that current facility and what we can expect for future expenses in it and the lack of return on those future expenses. So that's why we're looking at talking about a new construction behind Hanson Elementary.
So I'll come out, it'll be a great night.
It will be, and the projects at the other schools are just as important. The renovation at Northbrook Elementary, that's a big, big item, just because the kids need more space for, like, the band area, and just to
Where
make.
did you say?
Northbrook
Oh,
Elementary School.
Northbrook, yeah.
Just to make it more functional and a better space for the kids there. And Vivian Hussey School, it's just, we need more space. So, all very worthwhile projects.
When these schools, when all of the elementaries, all of the schools, when they were, even this one to some extent, when they were built, they were far fewer intervention kinds of services and extended services for students. So those take spaces. And when you have to take the classroom space and divide it into 3 workable spaces for a response to intervention programs, early literacy, early math programs, and so forth, you're down a classroom. There's not a thing you can do about that, because those students cannot access those services sitting in a hallway. Not doable.
And that's what's been going on.
Yes.
Or in
But
a
I
closet.
think that it's important
Yes.
to realize the emotional impact that will be felt by not just the people of Lebanon, but people throughout the district, anyone who's had anything to do with the school, about saying goodbye to that school and all the memories. And, you know, I think we should maybe have a community potluck or something. And when it's torn down, just, you know, have people sign on, they can take a brick for a souvenir or something. And
Yeah, and of course, that'll go to a referendum. So there'll be a school board, eventually a school board vote. There'll be a referendum that would happen there. There's notification to the State Department that has to be approved. So we're talking 4 to 5 years from now for full completion of the planning and construction and potentially deconstruction phases. But there'll be a great amount of opportunity for public input along the way.
This is just the very beginning. We're just starting to talk about it, so it's, you know, there's a,
I think we're thinking like 5-year plan.
Exactly.
So this, but.
And I think by then, people will be ready, but there's just a huge emotional impact. I mean, I went to school
And the
there, I
fact-
taught there, my kids went there, my grandkids are going there.
but you want those kids
I
to
do want-
have
I
a
do want
better
them-
place
I do.
to learn.
But
And
it's-
that's not what they're getting right now.
Yeah,
But
we're
it's
not.
just that the building is full of memories. And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it says, as she's talked about the wooden structure, if the money that we put into the building, for instance, at the middle school, there's that 30-year lifespan. We're sending that building off into the future for other school boards, other superintendents, other principals to be able to think, and community members, about what's the next, somewhere down the road, what's the next plan for that. But to say that we're going to be able to put enough money in to see the return on Lebanon Elementary School, to give it, plus the additional 30 years, is not realistic based on the study done by civil consultants.
That's why people need to come out and see
Yeah.
this
Yeah, I agree.
facility.
And because this district has done so well at paying off their debt, unfortunately, this means we would, maybe in 50 years, we won't make it onto that school construction unless by the state.
And so the revolving renovation fund, the school construction fund,
Yeah.
seems to be happening in a place next door to us. Do you know that
Yes, I
place?
know a little bit
Yes.
about that.
This building, $34 million, was largely built on state dollars. So we've got this year and next year left on payments, and then the school system does not have any debt service, major debt service on its buildings. And so when we do that, that means that since you don't carry a debt service, you don't qualify to get past a circuit breaker where the state says we should be contributing to the cost of their schools. So the buildings are well-maintained, and and are just about paid for.
That's why we've gotten so many years out of the Lebanon Elementary School, because our maintenance people here do such a super job, and they do that in all the different schools. We have a great maintenance crew.
Indeed.
Look at the middle school now.
I know.
And we've got a phase 3 there. When that's done, that school is going to look like, it's, people who went there would step in and say, I don't even recognize this place.
I just got a financial question. You mentioned civil consultants, and I was wondering if when we do these projects and studies, do we engage other firms in a competitive bidding process, or are we in a contract with civil consultants
We
solely?
have the bidding process that we can use, then you have to look at what are the stipulations for that. One of the things that is really evident is that civil consultants has, when I meet with Neil Raposa, for instance, and I ask him a question, and he'll say, okay, so in that building, if you go down the hall, there's the room on the left that we currently have the electrical panel in. That one is going to need to be moved if we do this, because we're going to have to double that wall as a fire extension. I mean, the stuff, it's the internal working memory of all of the working pieces. So we did not put it out to bid. We elected to go with the civil consultants because of their historic knowledge and workings of all our components.
With a school that we're completely tearing down and rebuilding, what does historical knowledge do to help?
Well, in general, we're talking about, it's not, here's a separate project, here's a separate project, so forth. We're talking about bonding, and when we bond out, we're not looking at 5 different bonds, for instance. So if we bond this into one package, we think that we'll get better rates on that, and we think that we'll have opportunities to work. We'll have to bring in separate contractors to do work. They can't, there's probably no one that can do all of those jobs successfully at the same time, ongoing. And so at that point, we put that out for bids. But I have not had an experience so far in this district in which civil consultants hasn't been extremely responsive, good, their pricing, their contributions that they do for the reduction in pricing for continued business and so forth.
I guess that was my concern, is typically to get the best price, competitive is the best way to go.
Yeah,
But if you feel their pricing is, because we've been in other districts, I don't know how their pricing is,
yeah.
but we're looking at millions and millions of dollars, I just want to make sure we're.
But that would go out to bid.
To the contract, that would go to the
That's going out to
contractor.
bid.
Well, how much are we spending on design?
I'd have to look to see what the total amount on design is, and also there are a couple of other firms that play into that. There's some subcontracting on different parts of it, like if you need the sprinklers and so forth. But
Not to be a stickler, I'm sorry. She's tired of my, she's
I
tired
think
of my
she's out
rambling.
of juice or
She's
something
escaping.
happened. Oh, there she is. Okay. So,
I agree
like
with
to
you,
keep the
though,
notes
about
going.
putting things out to bid, but sometimes it's, you know, the cheapest is not always the best, as you well
Very
know.
true.
And I think sometimes when you have a really good track record and a really good working relationship with a firm, it's worth it, even if it is a little bit more. I think it's worth it because of that relationship that you have. And I was very impressed at the meeting, the knowledge that Mr. Raposa
Neil Raposa.
had, it was, he really knew his stuff, and he told us what next steps would be, and
Timelines.
and also very much, like, say we do go ahead with the Lebanon project, making sure that you get another person in there as the supervisor of the whole project, because he said, you want to have another set of eyes and ears looking at everything so we can bounce it off each other. I might see something that they miss, they might find something I miss. It's just great to have another set of eyes, so I'm very comfortable with the fact that they're doing this background work for us.
Yeah, and I don't have to on a lot of the projects, I don't have to bring somebody in and get them up to speed on what the current conditions of the schools are. Civil consultants knows those, they know every system here in this school, for instance, and right down to what are what's the phases on the lights that we're doing, where are we with our retrofitting of the lights. And when we're working with them and they recommend, okay, this is a part that we're gonna say you send out. So they're very good about knowing what their specific business is.
So is there any plan, the new school is going to be a huge school. Is there any plan to make it feel like a smaller school?
We're not at that.
You're not there yet?
Yeah, it's just, it's just in that rough sketch phase. We're talking about potentially a 3, 4, 5 there to make room in the K2. And we're talking about a gymnasium to be able to free up the other space to be a standalone cafeteria, which creates the flexibility in the schedules, because between band, gym and lunch, your schedule is a lot of things are locked in for you, you lose some flexibility. We want to give them back a little bit more flexibility if we're going to be undertaking that kind of a project.
Cool. Anything else?
Just love to see people on the 29th.
Everybody come.
I will be there.
Dustin's coming, aren't you, Dustin?
Aren't you coming, Dustin? Say yes.
I've been
Yeah, he has been, he knows.
twice. No, if I came, I might go.
All right, anybody else have any other
Brad Kraus.
questions? Can we go back up to the financial summary now?
Yes, please.
Okay, number
So,
8.
the notes, if you're having trouble reading my scratch there, it says Milty is about 130,000 on the other. These are the pieces, and when it says state subsidy, somebody looks at that and goes, I know what that is, that comes from the state. And it comes in every other month, it comes in as payments. When it says local tax revenue, how much is collected, I think people understand that. But when it says like other,
Yeah.
people say, what's other? So the three biggest examples of other would be Maine Laptop Technology Initiative is $130,000 in a source that we bring in from the state. The tuitioning of students to our district is $100,000. Sports fees are, I don't know, a couple $100,000. I forget the specific number on that. So that's one that sometimes people look at and say, I don't know what that might be. The second one is that under student and staff support, so in our articles, it's Article 5, I believe off the top of my head, and that would be things like technology, that's a G, guidance counselors, social workers, nursing. How do you like my Sanskrit?
Can't read it. It's awful.
Would you believe I used to be
I
a very,
sort of
very
got it.
neat writer?
Wow.
Yeah. All the expenditures in what we have encumbered are, there's nothing unusual in that list to Sue, Denise, and I, and me. We're about where we should be at this time of the year. If anybody ends up with any questions, please feel free to shoot me a note and just say, hey, what's going on with that? And I can get you some good answers.
Okay.
Might not be the right one. No, it will be the right one.
Anybody have any questions on the finances part? Okay, I think we're down to number 10. I think we,
Yes.
are we at number 10?
Man, I don't want to speak for the board, but I think we are.
So, Dustin, this one is Section 9. This is terrible habit number 9, speak for the board. What? So,
We wouldn't do that, would we?
here's a piece that I pulled out of there. On page 49, it talks in the lessons learned, don't speak for the board without authority to do so. Let's say, for instance, that the board says at the next quarterly meeting for the municipalities, when the municipal boards meet, that Nancy's going to be a representative to that, or Lynn's a representative to that. So when the group decides, we're going to send somebody there for the purpose, specific purpose of be our listening ears there, update as you wish, but it's not about taking stances and so forth. So that's a case where somebody would go not to speak for the board, but to talk about the board's business in the public venue. It says you have the right to say whatever you like, but you do not have the right to imply that you speak for the board. You have a right and indeed an obligation to express your opinions at board meetings and beyond, but as a representative of the board, you must walk a very fine line when you communicate with the public. The board's position is what the majority of the board votes for. That's one of those really hard things about democratic government, is that when a board or legislative body or something makes a decision, the intent is, people say that is the decision and we have made it. We're not seeing as much of that outside, so it's a good reminder inside to be thinking that way. And then I went back to the Maine School Board Association Handbook, and in Section 8 on that, it talks about relations with the community. You're also learning that as an individual board member, you have no authority to act. This is an interesting piece to people. Like, wait a minute, I'm always a board member. If I step into somebody's classroom, even for a parent conference, they know I'm a board member. They kind of see me that way. This is about authority, though, to act. You can always share all you know about the schools with concerned citizens and friends. There are decisions as information you have based on your job that is part of your job, but may not be for public consumption at any given time. It talks on page 8.2 about using your best judgment to decide what is in the best interest of students and educational programs, and promote. It says every time you receive a call from a constituent or ask a neighbor what they think about a particular issue, you have an opportunity to inform that person about the good things that are going on in the schools and their conditions and needs. So I thought that was a really good point to support this kind of thing. It's a two-way street. It's not about somebody asks you a question or has a concern. It's an opportunity every time one of those things happen to say, have you been hearing about Noble High School lately, and MIT and the League of Innovative Schools, and let me talk to you about some of these things that are going on. Great opportunity to spread the word. As far as handling complaints, it says it is appropriate to listen carefully to the issue and then refer the person to a staff member, administrator, or other person who is in the best position to address the complaint. That's that close, I refer to it as closest to the flame. In general, complaints should be handled as close as possible to their origin. In most cases, your involvement should extend no further than helping the person with the complaint set up an appointment with the appropriate person, but only if they really need your help in doing so. You should also let your superintendent or board chair know about the complaint in case any further intervention is necessary. Then the last thing I'll just mention is on the 10 tips for new board members. It talks about, remember that the only authority you have lies in the action of the board, right? The togetherness. Give the superintendent and staff your political support, your public support. Welcome comments from public about school problems. What you have to kind of be careful of, I don't care whether it's a school board member or it's a job that somebody has or it's at home. Nobody wants to be thought of as the complaint department. If you have an issue, you know the one person you can go to. Listen carefully, then refer to them. It talks about the same stuff. The board as a whole may not support your view, so you have to commit yourself to a stand. Sometimes you feel that the board may reject, but eventually it becomes a board decision. Good notes, hopefully good referral, just reminders for people, because we didn't get the chance, to sit this summer and just kick some of these around. But I'll just pull a few. Not so much when we get into budget season, I'll give you a break.
See, we still have to read and do our homework, even though we're on this board, just so you all know that.
I cheated on her test.
Don't worry, I scored them.
All right, are we down to number 12?
We are. I have
Noble High
three
School in
things
Maine.
about Noble High School. So MIT, someplace in Massachusetts, came in to begin a documentary research. MIT is in the process of putting all of their graduate programs, like a number of other universities and colleges, online for free.
What? Really?
Online graduate programs for free. So I'm wondering, excuse me, how do you
How do
keep
you
your
make
doors
that? I
open
was gonna say,
when you
how
do
you
that?
balance a
Must have
checkbook?
to still pay for credits.
I don't know, maybe it's good advertising, maybe you're collecting. I don't know exactly how that works, but I'd be really interested. So they came in to speak with Joe Finley, Ally Kearney, and myself separately last week, probably 1 hour chat sessions, and everything was videotaped, and they're going to be putting together a video documentary about what they learned about Noble High School, considering specifically proficiency-based education, personalization of learning for students, opportunities for students to have multiple attempts to demonstrate proficiency, about standards and about graduation requirements. So a healthy list, but things that they're saying, so how are you people doing this? So it's very humbling to know that you work and you're connected with a school that gets recognition from a place like MIT to come in. Last time I checked, I thought they were a think tank, to come in and say, you guys are doing something really interesting here. So, you know, I thought Mr. Finley might get a little bit of a big head about that. So then, just to help cap it off, see, it's a pun, the Center for American Progress wrote, CAP, cap it off.
Go on,
Yes,
we got
the
it.
Center
We
for,
got it.
all right, the Center for American Progress, an online magazine that does a lot about schools, decided to write a major piece including research data, tables and the whole 9 yards. They picked 3 schools in the United States, 3 high schools, to do their research on. Hello. Noble High School, amazing piece. So if you go to Center for American Progress,
I'll have it in the notes.
Noble High School, oh, so you'll have a live link or
I'll try.
something? Okay.
Are these linked on our website at all?
It is.
Not yet, but they will
Oh,
be.
it's not?
Oh, I don't know, is it?
Well, I think it might be. I talked to Chris Russo about it.
Okay.
And then and a lot of it were the same topics plus multiple pathways was something they were very interested in. And extended learning opportunities, college level courses students are taking, interesting different kinds of classes kids can take, like a guitar building or the Chinese programming, or there were several that they mentioned. The third thing was that 53 representatives from around a large area of the 53 reps from the League of Innovative Schools came to Noble High School last week for an all-day presentation on some of the same things that I've just been talking to you about. So between MIT, the LIS, and CAP, we've got alphabet soup
I was
happening
gonna
all
say,
over
you
the
have a lot of
place.
letters.
Yeah, so really, really good things. Kudos to the teaching staff, kudos to the administration, kudos to students. Noble High School is being seen as in the forefront in a lot of
Isn't it
ways.
because of the proficiency-based education, was that primarily?
That
what
would
they're
be one of the
focusing?
biggest drivers, because it trickles down into so many other things. So if you're going to have proficiency-based, then you have to have standards. And if you have standards, you have to have proficiency. So how do you know when someone's proficient? And you have to be comparing them against a standard, not against each other. And so what do your graduation requirements look like then? How do you allow students to do CTE, college and technical education, career and technical education? And it trickles down to, so how do you even set up an electronic grade book for something like that? Simple stuff that, it's not the big meaty thing, like how do you do PBE?
Nuts and bolts of the whole thing.
Yes, and heterogeneously grouped classes in which anybody can opt for layers, and they can opt for honors courses and so forth. So this past couple of weeks, students in Ms. Dole's and Ms. Gray's classes have been writing persuasive letters. And part of it is, if you want the opportunity to earn an A, in that you have to have somebody who has a decision over the topic, who may have sway or decision over the topic that you're writing about, read your paper and provide you feedback on it. So I've been doing a number of, which I thoroughly enjoy, a number of meeting with students and having conferences and conferring with them about what I see in their papers and talking about grammatics and talking about content and flow of the paper and so forth. So that's just great stuff. Can't get, well, I can get enough of it, but, but it's been really good so far. So we have the same rubrics all over the place. If you're doing argumentation in a science class, there's a rubric for that. If you're doing the same topic in the social studies class, you're using the identical rubric, the identical language and so forth. So really, really good. They're mostly curious about how you weave all of these things together, because you can't just put this in and say, here, this is going to work. We know that fails. So how did this happen? And how did so much of it grow from the classrooms, from the teachers themselves in their professional development time that this board and these communities support?
Is this in addition to, or does it include the article we talked about at the last meeting?
Includes.
It includes, okay.
Yes, that was the CAP.
That was amazing.
Nice article.
All right, we're going to other. Does anybody have any?
I have just a couple of quick others. They're donations. Do you mind? Okay, so for the Tri-Town Bookmobile, there is a donation from the Lois Lenski Covey Foundation grant of $3,000. Providing grants, they provide grants for the purchase of children's books to public-private organizations which operate bookmobile programs. And we all know Laura Cashel. She's going to find that. So that's one grant I'd need the board to decide. It's a little over 500, so you'd need to have a,
Somebody like to make a motion on that?
I would make a motion to accept that with excitement.
And a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
$3,000. She's going to need a wagon behind that bus.
She'll have to get a
pretty soon.
trailer.
You'll have to get
Or
one of
behind the
those.
bus.
Steve, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I know that's great that we get money for books, but, we got to make sure that we can keep the bookmobile running by paying for all the things that aren't glamorous, like
gas.
the fuel for the bus and
That's
the
really
maintenance of
funny
the
that you
bus.
say that, because
I hope you've got another grant for,
hopefully after this meeting, we'll go over and look
Oh,
at
good.
some of the
because
some of
that's
the
really
shapes of-
important, and I think people, the
some of
books
the
are
buses.
wonderful, we need them, but
Yes.
we need the other stuff too.
So the second one is, there is a facility called the Fabulous Find Resale Boutique Program, and they wish to donate $500 to the TTB. So it's 500 or more, so Tri-Town Bookmobile.
Okay, oh, great.
And that's, any restrictions on that to whatever they want to use it on?
And no, and
Yay.
she's also applied for May Mariners hockey teams, Red Claws jerseys and so forth. Also a game that some of the proceeds will come from, autographed basketball. I mean, Laura's just, she's a machine.
Great.
Cool.
So it's $500, so I'd need a motion on that.
Somebody want to make that motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Next.
I like the way you folks accept money. Middle School Fitness for Life received a donation from, I believe, I'm hoping the pronunciation is Balada Fitness, home of CrossFit Indestructible at 19 Buffum Road, number 3, Berwick, Maine, in the form of a check for the amount of $1,623. The money will be used to purchase gym equipment and fitness supplies and materials.
Nice.
That's an odd amount, but they have specific stuff they asked for, so that's what the total came up to.
Yeah, 1623, yes.
All right, so we need a motion for that.
I'll make a motion to accept that one.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Great. What generous people.
They know how much. we
Any more?
appreciate
Got any more good news?
I don't, but there was one piece that I think, did it get missed in here about the resignation?
Yeah, we did that already. You were, yeah.
Yes. Okay, I'm all set. Thank you very much for
We
the
have a wonderful
opportunity.
community, I'll tell
We
you
do,
what.
we are,
We are blessed.
absolutely.
Any board members have any others?
I guess I got a small-ish other, a news article I read today, which I hope everyone gets a chance to check out, is the FDA is instituting new rules on Juuls and other vapes, to, I guess, make it much difficult for youth to get, but the statistics were staggering. 80% increase since just last year in high school students, 50% for under high school, an increase in 1 year. I made a slight suggestion at the code of conduct meeting, I don't know if they'll follow it, but that is to increase the penalty for using vapes to also include expulsion as a deterrent, because right now the max is just a suspension, but it is rampant to the point where I've got kids that hold on to their business till they get home because they don't want to go in the bathrooms because of what's going on in there, and we need to nip it in the bud. But very good article, it's, I saw it on CNN, but it was on several other places.
I
So
heard that they're doing away with menthol flavors and fruit flavors.
they were keeping mint, methyl, and tobacco, all other flavors are going bye-bye. And then advertising restrictions and placing restrictions and just a lot of things that you thought would have already been in place. But I guess we're not, you know, there were regulations on the tobacco industry, but not so much on the juice industry. And
there is nicotine in there, don't let them tell you there is.
More.
More than a
Yeah.
cigarette.
Highly concentrated.
And they can also have other substances in there
Darcy,
as
can
well.
you send me a link to that article?
I can find it tonight and send it to you.
Did you say the Press Herald?
I linked it right on my
Your
school board
page?
Facebook page.
Okay.
Did you say it was in the Press Herald?
No, I was on CNN.
CNN, okay.
And NPR did a story on it too, tonight.
NPR? Did you say N or M?
At Maine Public.
That, Maine, okay, M, thanks.
Any others?
It's good to have Joanne back.
Yes, it is.
Nice to be back.
All right,
We didn't get a chance to make a big deal of her making and getting an award while she was here. But
that's right.
Thank you.
So, I mean, we don't want to leave people wondering what that was. So it was for her, I think it's 15 years of continuous service as a volunteer, an elected volunteer to the school board here in our 3 towns.
an
15
exemplary
years.
elected volunteer.
Yes, so thank you very much,
Yes,
Joanne.
I missed 2 weeks.
At the conference, we mentioned she never misses a thing, and they said, "Where is she?" Well, she's not here.
I went on vacation for once in my life.
Public input.
But thank you very much. It's been a pleasure serving the community, not just Lebanon, but I feel North Berwick and Berwick as well. I feel we're like one big family.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, so the next thing we have is our second public input session. If anybody else out there has any public input? Extra credit? I don't know, something.
They know it's extra credit
I know,
too,
you
and they're still
told.
not. Okay. I'd like to make
I
a
think it-
motion to
yeah.
adjourn.
I'll second that.
Dustin and Becky?
And all in favor?
7-0. Okay, so if people have the opportunity, I've got a couple of buses.